Hello, hello, ladies. This podcast is designed exclusively for you. This is Her Talk Show where we dive into inspiring thoughts, ideas, and stories, all with one purpose: to empower and uplift women like you. I'm Sabrina Victoria, your host and guide on this journey of self-discovery and growth. I invite you to hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. Together, we are creating a vibrant community of empowered women. Get ready to unleash your brilliance because Her Talk Show starts now.
We come to you every day with the best speakers, relationship coaches, spiritual mentors, trailblazers, business owners, authors, young hustlers, podcasters, entrepreneurs, fitness trainers, therapists, financial advisors, and more. We ask our guests one question: what do you know that I don't know? Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Talk Show. We have interviewed over 500 women on this stage, and we are adding another one to the list today. If you are listening live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're watching us at so we can show you some love in the comments. Either way, if you are watching us, please share this video wherever you're at so we can get more eyes and more ears on the awesome content that we are sharing today. Today, I'm talking to an amazing woman, Kerri Lewis. She is an addiction recovery coach working with people who are addicted to substances or to ideas. Yes. Her superpower is helping you free yourself from fear so you can experience life from a place of love. Welcome, lady.
So glad to be here. It's been a
Yes,
long time coming. Thank you so much for having me, and to your audience. I look forward to hearing what your thoughts are on me.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here. And as you already know, I'm sober, so I'm super excited. I love talking to individuals on sobriety and about their story, right? Because they're all different.
Absolutely. We each are an individual with our own journey that has gotten us from struggling and suffering to hopefully sobriety and freedom. So I love to learn about people's stories, and I love that you were sober as well.
Yes. So you're bringing the topic of truth and how speaking your truth heals you. Tell us more about this. What does this mean?
Yeah, too often we keep our thoughts inside, locked away due to shame, due to feelings of being seen as emotional or too needy. And as a result, we end up really never getting our needs met. And more importantly, we become resentful.
Mm.
And as a recovering addict, what I can tell you is when you are in addiction, you're in a victim mentality. And there's no judgment, but it's this really tough situation where things are so hard and it's so heavy. And when you don't speak your truth, you're always going to come from a place of never getting your needs met because nobody's going to know what they are to actually meet them.
Yes, you have to speak your needs.
Absolutely. And you need to speak, from experiences and how you feel, and advocate for what it is that's going on in your world, your children's world, your family's world, to really become the empowered individual that each one of us is truly put on this earth to be.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think one of the hardest things is speaking your needs. So, how did you come to this realization? Because I'm sure it wasn't super easy. I'm sure it wasn't like they're like, speak your needs. And you're like, I'm going to speak all the needs.
All the needs, right?
So, how did you do it?
Well, it's interesting. So, real quickly, my backstory is I come from a home of 6 kids, and to even be seen, you need to speak your needs, right? And I always was that person who kind of, if it didn't feel right, I was going to say something and then get punished. So for a long time, I, really withdrew, and I kind of didn't share my truth with anybody. but being on my own at 14 and really having to take care of myself, I had to quickly learn how to provide. So I became a leader at 17. And if I wanted to succeed, I needed to ask for help. And if I wanted to get the job done, I needed to be able to ask people to do what I needed them to do.
Mm.
And so it really was an evolution, particularly in the beginning, because I had no tact and I could be really demanding. But I didn't have a choice. Like, I was going to speak my needs because that was the way I was going to survive. So for me, my evolution wasn't so much speaking my truth, is finding a way to speak my truth in a way that is respectful to myself, but also to the other person,
Mm.
and can be heard. And even if that person can't agree, at least it's done in kindness, so that I feel good about myself when I leave. And so it's still an ongoing evolution, you know?
Yes, I agree. I know that you talk a lot about dropping the judgment and really stepping into curiosity. And I just love the way that sounds. Um, how did you do that for yourself? And then how do you do that for your clients or teach
Well,
it?
I mean, I think that first off, when you come from experience, you gain wisdom. So it's really easy to be judgment free when you have overcome so many obstacles and challenges and moments that at one point in your life caused you shame. And so if you can recognize and reconcile and forgive yourself for those things, to me, it truly is impossible for me to judge somebody else, right? Because I would be condemning myself if I did that. Secondly, I'm a huge student of energy, right? So I study quantum physics and I understand how each emotion carries an energetic frequency and a vibration. And so as I really started digging into the biology of our brain and belief structure and why it is we operate the way in which we do, I was able to discover that first off, we're operating from paradigms, belief systems, structures that have been in place for centuries. And so I was able to say, okay, if this has been a narrative or behavior that has gone on for centuries, then I can give myself just a little bit of grace there. And as I dug deeper and recognized that shame and guilt are really, really low energetic vibrations, I realized that if I were to allow myself to continue to sit in this judgment of myself, I was going to sit in that shame, that guilt, and essentially it's killing you, really. Because what it does is it affects how the world sees you, how you interact with other people, because we're magnets. And so if we know we attract what it is we put out, then I didn't want to attract a whole bunch of people who were steeped in guilt and shame.
Mm.
And that was the beginning of me being able to really examine um being judgmental of myself and others.
Yes, definitely. I want to talk a little bit about this guilt and shame. Because one of the things that I have an issue with within some of the programs that run for AA is this phrase that they say of I'm an alcoholic. My name is, I'm an alcoholic. And the guilt and the shame that I feel could reside in those words. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that goes deeper, Sabrina. I think that we're talking about labels now, and I have a huge issue with labels. And it's so funny because I was actually, this is going to be in my newsletter next week. Here's the thing about labels. If it serves you, and having a label attached to you puts you on a trajectory of, you know, implementing strategies and tools that are going to help you, then by all means, if that
Mm.
works for you, awesome.
Oh.
But more often than not, particularly in the mental health world and in addiction, labels often keep people steeped in this belief system that there is something inherently wrong with them, or they're different, or that this choice that they made somehow kind of confines them to this group. And I call bullshit. Like, I think what I see is people who have been labeled 20 years ago, and I'm immersed in this all the time, so I have evidence out the wazoo about this. People have been labeled 20 years ago as having depressive disorder, and they go seek help. They see the same psychiatrist and therapist for 20 years. All they do is increase medication. Nobody's giving them new tools or strategies to encourage them to step out of their comfort zone and grow.
Yep.
They're just keeping them down. And the same holds true with, a lot of AA and some of those programs, which is why I tell people, if you work with me, I don't have a program, because we are all individuals. And I'm not looking at you as an alcoholic or a heroin abuser, or I'm looking at you as an individual who suffers immensely, and as a result you lean into something that numbs you out. And my job is to help you identify why it is you're suffering, and let's pick apart that. Let's not necessarily focus specifically on your quote unquote issue that presents, meaning you're leaning into shopping too much, phone too much, working too much, all of these things and more I did. But rather the bigger picture. And so you got to take, for me, you got to take out the label. You got to identify somebody as their individual self. However, I want to add one thing to that. I really believe our story is our superpower. And I believe that you and I talked about this when we had a conversation before, right? And so when you can truly examine some of the behaviors you've leaned into as a result of either an addiction you are in, or an upbringing, or a belief system that you just grew up knowing and not really having and a concept of anything else. When you can look at that and really work through those emotions, then there's never shame and guilt, because it's like you've transcended that story from a place of pain and a place of angst to a place of your superpower. And that's how I show up. I'm an open book, and it's because I examined every single one of the beliefs, the behaviors, the stories that caused me deep shame and guilt. And I started to look at it from a judgment-free perspective. And I would be like, okay, I'm not going to attach any emotion right now. Just why is that I behave that way? And when you can pick it apart, first off, you're not the same person as you were when you made that decision. Second of all, a lot of the times it's because you were trying to fill a need that wasn't being met, and you didn't have another way to meet that need. And so you can always find really a valuable learning lesson from any situation in your past or present, that can help you feel more empowered rather than feel disempowered and stuck in that guilt shame loop.
Yes, definitely. I really like what you said about um, labels, and then allowing the individual to choose, right? You said if it serves you.
Yes.
And I think that that is just so powerful, because some people, the labels do serve them for a certain amount of time, or a certain lineage. And then others, I feel like it's not serving them. And there is a lot of guilt and a lot of shame around some of these labels that go around with people in any sort of addiction. Like you're saying, there's lots of them. And I also think, to kind of add on to what you're saying, labels really don't let you grow.
Yes, that is a beautiful point. And that's the thing is, I'm immersed in people who, and I'm not even talking about clients who I grew up with, who, whether it's from their parent, or whether it was from a doctor when they were 12, or whether it was from a teacher, was told this label or this identifying belief about them, and they have clung to that, and as a result they don't move forward. And so it is imperative that people start to look at what their emotional responses to any given thing. It doesn't really matter what it is, right? Whether it's our conversation or a diagnosis that a doctor gives them. And if it's a diagnosis that feels empowering, meaning, okay, I'm super glad that I now know that I have this issue, and we're gonna, incorporate all these tools to alleviate this issue. Awesome. But then if you go to the same doctor and now you're feeling fright, you're feeling fearful, you don't really know which way to go, does that necessarily serve you? Probably not. And I encourage people not to take the words of an external source and rather start to look internally. And truly, I say I'm an addiction recovery coach. It guts you like a fish. And I mean it with my heart, because what I do is I start to give people space to question their own beliefs, to start to really examine why it is they hold on so tightly to a way of doing something, or a belief about how their parents showed up, and I give them permission to change the story. And in changing that story, again, my sole mission is to get people out of the guilt, shame, fear trap to energies that are higher vibrating energies. We're talking about courage. We're talking about, even, believe it or not, anger. Because when we're talking about, people get pissed off and never say it, right? They bite down, they don't say it. Then what it does, it becomes trapped energy in your body, and it's going to present emotional disturbances, or you're going to have physical ailments. Either way, that energy is stuck with you. And so we're talking about generation after generation of people not getting angry. And then we see it. It presents, particularly in the older generations, and women who weren't allowed to express their emotions because it, quote unquote, made them weak, made them, messy. Think about women who were hospitalized by their husbands in the 50s and 60s because they bucked tradition. So yeah, I'm happy to get a client to anger, because apathy is another energetic vibration that is close to the lowest energy you can emit. And when you're in apathy, it's like you've just given up. You're just accepting whatever it is. And then as a result, people numb out, because who wants to live like that?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I agree with that for sure. And I think it's so interesting. I think that this scares people sometimes, you talking about anger. I think anger scares people. It's really known as like something that you're not supposed to do. It's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you're feeling angry, whoever you're angry at, whether it's your parents or spouse or kids or whatever, you're like a bad guy.
Well, yeah, but that also goes to like our conditioning, right?
Yeah.
So I truly believe, Sabrina, that if you really, really get into the weeds of it, almost every single person in the world, almost, not everybody, but a majority of people do struggle with addiction. It may not be as clear, because it could be eating, shopping, working. It's so broad, gambling. But the reason why is we suffer. And why are we suffering? Because, and I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday. We have been brought up, born at 5 years old. Now you go into this structured school for however many years, where you're supposed to sit for 6 hours and retain this information with very little movement. Our bodies are meant to move. And then we're taught that you need to go to university, college, then you need to get a job. You buy a house, you get a car, you maybe have 2.5 kids, and then you basically just work until you're 60, 70, and repeat the cycle over and over. That's really how most people, nobody ever really looks at, am I leaning into my passion? What truly fills my cup every day? And this is so prevalent that I was literally having a conversation with my 12-year-old nephew the other day, and he was talking about comedy, being a comedian. And I'm like, dude, go for it. Do it, right? You know,
Yes.
somebody I have unbelievable respect and love for jumps in. Absolutely not. There's no money in comedy. In the world we live in, you need to find a job that's going to pay your bills, and that is the common denominator, right? That's the narrative, and I call bullshit on that too. I think you would agree. Yeah, I made it to CEO in corporate America. I have a 10th grade education. I finally hit CEO and I was like, I did all of this crap for this. This is the most unfulfilling, unrewarding position. It's taking me away from deep connection from people. I absolutely hated it so much so I quit within 6 months. And that was how I identified my self-worth. Oh, hell no. And so that's what I try to do. I want to encourage people to get curious. Just get curious. If you're going to speak your truth, even if it's to yourself, most people can't look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy. I'm really aching inside and I don't know how to meet that need. That's at least the start of opening up the box of curiosity. But most people can't even look at themselves and be honest, because to your point, they're so fearful of what's going to come up. And if you really dig in and do the work, particularly around addiction, you are going to get angry, and you need to get angry. And I'm not suggesting go punch walls or throw things. I personally studied Krav Maga and boxing for 12 years before I found another way in meditation. But you need to allow yourself to express all of the pent up emotional discord that has never been allowed to surface. You know, and that's not to say you have to rehash every issue that ever came up in your life. You really don't. You just have to allow yourself to feel that emotion. And it's exhausting in the beginning, but as you continue to allow yourself to feel your feelings, because if you do, you can move through hard and 0.2 seconds. Like if I'm upset, I feel it and I'm moving on to the next thing in 2 minutes, and people are like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I am, because I honor myself in any given moment. And so I don't need this huge day, 2 days, month, or whatever to sit in that pain, because it's allowed to flow.
Yes. I agree with that.
Yeah.
As Dane Walther said, preach, sister.
Yeah. I can preach. Trust me. You don't want me to go there.
I like what you said about leaning into your passion. For those that don't really understand that, because there's so many people who are right, live in the corporate America, doing the thing. They wake up, they go to work, they come home, they eat, they watch TV, go to sleep.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of passion. What does it mean to lean into your passion?
Well, it goes back to curiosity. Like if there's 3-4 words I can highlight that I want anybody to walk away from, curiosity. So what is something you've always wanted to try and you haven't? And why haven't you? And are you willing to? Right now, I'm learning pottery with my 85-year-old neighbor. All right. I'm not even kidding you. I'm taking piano lessons because I've always wanted to take piano lessons, and the opportunity presented itself. And I said, hell yeah, I'm capitalizing on it. And so, you know, for me, I was just willing to try something new. And here's the thing, this is how I approach it with my daughters, right? So I want my 2 daughters to be really empowered. So I tell them, try something. Now I won't let them quit if they want to quit because it's hard. Because the thing that I love to do is some of the hardest things I do, right? Learning piano, love it, but it's hella hard to learn music theory. So if my kids try to quit because it's just icky, sticky, and you're in that middle area, I'm like, ride it out for 6 months. And if there's no improvement or you really hate, you know, fine. But if you try something and you don't like it, walk away. we're told, oh, you got to stick to it, you got to commit. No, you don't. You need to get curious. You need to try new things. And so trying new things. And there's a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, I believe. It's literally a 3 to 4 month program. And Elizabeth Gilbert used it. There's a lot of very famous people, artists, creators, who have used this book when they've been stuck. And what it does is it starts to teach anybody and everybody that we're creative, right? Every single one of us is a creative genius. It's just that we've been trapped in this, and it's masculine energy, not masculine feminine. I'm not throwing out sexism here or shade, because I love my men out there, but the masculine logic, you have to have structure, order, form. This book really helps you start to peel those layers back and get curious about yourself, and it encourages you to try new things and play. And that's the other thing, outside of curiosity, play. When's the last time you went outside and swung on a swing? When's the last time you blew bubbles? Not because you were with your kid, but because you like bubbles and you want to blow bubbles, right? So often we're like so afraid to look foolish, but it's in that play that you start to recognize, wow, I really enjoy this. And if I really like coloring, then maybe I'll like painting, and maybe I can get paint. And then if I like painting, I can try pottery. So it's just being open to new experiences without, again, that judgment piece, right? I'm terrible at pottery. I've been doing it for a month now, and I haven't made a bowl bigger than like, right? But it's just the doing that creates that space to figure out what my next passion's going to be,
Yes. I know you talk a lot about fear. How do you help someone leave fear behind?
Well, you got to do it. It's kind of like, what is it? It's, I forget what they call in like anxiety. Anyway, you have to do the thing that scares you. You just have to. So when I boxed, I tattooed, feel the fear and do it anyway. I wasn't not going to be afraid the first time I got in a ring, right? But I wasn't going to allow that fear to stop me from doing something I trained really hard to do, and I really wanted to do. And so often people don't do the thing out of fear, and I encourage them, lean into that fear. You're gonna do it, and you're gonna be afraid, but at least at the end you can look back and celebrate yourself for doing the thing that you were afraid of. And it's interesting, I was just with a really good friend of mine. She's a boudoir photographer, and I've done nude photo shoots. I would be considered by most pretty fearless, right? And that's so surface. I just am not willing to be stopped because of my fear. And as a result, I've done a lot of really cool things. I opened up a multi-million-dollar business with really successful men that intimidated the crap out of me, because here I am, this uneducated by their standard, society standard. I'm obviously educated, but uneducated by their standard woman, having to, like you said earlier, that you might challenge my thinking, which I love. Challenge your thinking. That was terrifying. But the fact that I showed up in that arena, despite being fearful and even feeling like an imposter, and holding my own, and then being able to help create something, I look back and I'm like, okay, if I can do that, then there's really nothing I can't do. I'm still going to do it. I'm going to be afraid, but I'm going to do it. And my job as a coach, which is why I'm a coach and not a therapist, is I'm going to kick your ass into doing it. I'm not going to let you talk yourself out of it. You're going to do the thing. And sometimes that thing is having a tough conversation. I just said to my client yesterday, she was put in a really precarious situation at work. And I said, well, did you advocate for your needs? No. Have you ever advocated for your needs? No. Okay, so don't you think that it's time for you to start speaking up for what it is you need in your place of work.
Wow.
And that alone can be terrifying.
Yeah.
And this is the thing I want to say about speaking your truth that I really think is very critical to highlight. You will be rejected at times. There will be people who will lambaste you. They will make you feel small, or at least try to. All of that is irrelevant if you show up for yourself. And that's the most important part of speaking your truth is, I, to this day, put myself out there, right? So I am not afraid to show up in any arena. I don't care who you are. I feel like I have an equal claim to be in that space. You could be the president. You could be a street sweeper. It's irrelevant. We're equal. And I oftentimes get rejected, and people really will do their best, particularly when they're operating from fear, to make me feel like I'm not welcome, that I am too bold, that how dare I think I am worthy. And it hurts. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't hurt still. I would be lying, but I'm not letting anybody shirk me out of any place that I know I belong. And so I allow myself to feel my feelings for that minute. And then I get back up and I show back out, because I'm not going to let anybody dictate what it is I can and cannot do. That's for me to decide.
Yeah. Sharing your truth.
So important.
Yes. I kind of feel like that's the most important.
It is. But again, back to what I said earlier, it starts with sharing your truth with yourself, right? So it's interesting. I think back, 2 hours before my wedding, I knew I should never have married my ex-husband, right? I knew it, and I couldn't share that truth with me. I'm like, nope, I'm silly, and went down the aisle, right? Same as, I had overcome addiction to drugs in my teens, spent prayer for myself, only to fall back into that rat trap. And as I'm drinking my second bottle of wine at night, I'm like, no, I don't have a problem. I'm happy as a clam, right? Because it's really easy for us to lie to ourselves. It is. And so that's why I love accountability. I hold myself accountable, but I also ask other people to hold me accountable, over silly things, because even I've done this work since I was 14. I've been studying psychology, theology, philosophy, fitness. I've been doing this a long time. But if I am in an emotional state, or if I am in angst or uneasy something, it's easy for me to be like, maybe today's not the day that you should show up and speak in front of that audience. And I need somebody to be like, Kerri, that's bull crap. You can do this. You're just feeling your feels. Get your ass out there. So, being honest with yourself, and then communicating your needs to others. And others may not always meet those needs. So my family cannot meet my needs. My immediate family can absolutely not meet my needs. However, in me sharing my truth, I was able to identify that. I didn't personalize it. I was able to recognize that is where they are, and I can love them where they are. But I also was able to find a community that was able to meet my needs. Find your community if you don't figure out who can't meet your needs, because that's the first thing, right? If my ex-husband can't meet my needs, I need to ask for them to find out he can't, and then make a choice that's going to nurture me and make me feel supported. And subsequently, obviously, I ended up divorced, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the husband's feeling just as unfulfilled, and you go out on a couple dates and you reignite that flame.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that goes back to checking in on whether or not that serves you.
Yes. And that should be an everyday, multiple day type of thing. Does this feel good for me right now? And then if not, why? And this goes back to judgment, right? Because this is what happens. And we have intuition. We know what's good for us, but our logic kicks in. All right. And a good example, kids know no adults they don't want anything to do with. Yet as parents, we're like, oh no, that's Aunt Sally. You go give Aunt Sally a hug. No, Aunt Sally's a real bitch. And this kid is trusting their intuition, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
so true. And that happens to us all the time. So, we'll go into a job interview and it's a job where it's a promotion. We're going to make more money and all of this. And then what happens? We get in there and the energy's off. We feel it. It doesn't serve us. But because it's a promotion, it's more money. We work super hard. We don't listen to our truth. We're like, nope, I'm going to go for it. And then you end up kicking yourself in 6 months because you're miserable again.
Yes.
So honoring yourself, really being able to say this doesn't serve me and not having to explain yourself or have a reason why. There are a lot of times when I will walk out of the situation and I don't owe anybody an explanation. I owe my soul an explanation. I owe it to myself to feel safe in my own skin. And that goes to creating boundaries. So when we're speaking our truth, nobody has the right to yell at you. Nobody has the right to make you feel safe. If you are ever put in a position where you don't feel comfortable, you have every right to extricate yourself from that situation. I don't care if it's a boss. I don't care. And too often we sit in that and we allow people to treat us poorly because we've been conditioned that it's poor manners, it's bad behavior. How dare you show up and advocate for yourself? And that to me. So when we're talking about our subconscious is always listening to us, right? So I study neurolinguistics. How we talk to ourselves matters. So if I'm saying I feel gross, but I stay in that situation, I'm telling myself subconscious, I'm not worthy of extricating myself. And that repeats the pattern. So you just got to disrupt it. You got to just walk away. And if people are mad, let them be mad. That's their problem, not yours.
Yes. 100. All of that. Yeah. If you did not catch that last part, I would rewind it, that last minute. That was incredibly powerful. Thank you so much, Kerri. I know that you are an addiction recovery coach. I want to ask, as we're kind of wrapping up here, those that are looking into sobriety, those that are sticking their big toe in the pool and kind of looking into it, what are the steps? What are the first 1 or 2 steps that somebody should be taking? Are we going cold turkey? What does Kerri tell people to do as far as working into sobriety and then after sobriety, wherever you want to take it? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I'll give you 2 answers. If it's related to your health and your body is physically declining due to that addiction, then I suggest and recommend that you find a place that you can detox in a healthy manner, so that way you don't jeopardize your life and your body, and that's really important. For me, the clients, not a fan of quitting cold turkey anything. And again, it goes back to suffering. So what happens is I tell you to quit this thing, and sure, you quit it, but you're spending your day in deep angst. You're having you're emotional. You're really, who wants to live that way? And then we wonder why the reoccurring rate is so high, because people don't want to live that way. And so for me personally, so if you're dipping your toe in, and even if you don't work with a coach, pick up one new tool and stick to it for 30 days. I highly recommend a gratitude practice. 5 minutes in the morning. It can't just be, I'm thankful for this, I'm thankful for that. You have to feel it in your heart. And the reason why is science has shown that it rewires the way you think, right? Now, it should be mentioned that alcohol, drugs, they're depressing your brain with dopamine hits. And so it has to pendulum switch back. So you're going to get adrenaline and norepinephrine. However, even that practice is going to start to shift how you show up for yourself. And then whatever you incorporate, celebrate it. So another key component to success is celebrating your wins. More often than not, think about it. Somebody could be like, Sabrina, you killed it on your show. You look stunning. You're fabulous. Most people like, things, and they can't receive that. If you can't celebrate yourself, you're never going to be able to receive any accolation from anybody else. So you need to celebrate yourself. But also, again, when we're talking about subconscious patterning, you, by celebrating yourself, is showing up for yourself. So you're teaching your brain that you're worthy of the effort that you just put in, and so you're gonna want to go back and do it again. So small steps. I started with gratitude, and then slowly over time, another one, a real simple one, I start with a lot of my clients: drink a glass of water every morning before you start. Like, literally, you wake up, you drink water. Why? Because most people are dehydrated, right? Your body needs water. But secondly, it's the pure act of showing up for yourself, right? It seems so trivial. I drank water. You literally made a choice that was kind. That was a kind choice to your body, to your mind. And then celebrate yourself and do that for 30 days and see how you feel. And then incorporate another. And, depending on my client, sometimes we wean off whatever it is fairly quickly. Other times they have a whole toolbox of strategies and tools to lean into that they just slowly wean off of it, because there's so many other things that they're doing when they're feeling that angst that they feel comfortable with, that they no longer need to numb out.
Yes. Well, we have a ton of people watching live. Thank you so much for being here, everyone, and for listening live. For those of you watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay. I want to ask Kerri, since we do have so many people hanging out with you here, obviously they're resonating with what you're saying. Who specifically do you work with? Who should be reaching out to you? Do you work with individuals who are just getting into sobriety, or individuals who have been sober for a little while, or both? Who should be contacting you?
Yeah, you know what? I work with people who are not in sobriety, whatever it is. I even work with people who are perfectionists, who are like me, who, worked all the way to CEO, meaning working 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., workaholics. So I really work with anybody in their addiction recovery. I don't generally work with people who are so immersed in addiction that they've lost everything, because really they need rehab. You need to go to detox. You need a support system. And then once you come out of it, I'm happy to work with you, because AA, all of those programs, they offer so much, and I have such respect, but it lacks in a lot of ways. Because if you look at, just say, AA, yeah, sure, you're not drinking, you're not leaning into drugs, but you're smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, and eating donuts. That's all forms of addiction. So I do want, like, my end goal is to get people so that they know themselves so well that even if they choose that thing, right? There are times when I just can't cope, and I'm like, I'm going to binge watch Game of Thrones, right? I know that is a numbing out, but I make that choice consciously. It's not something that I'm like, I'm just going to do this, right? So I'm happy to work with people when they're there. But, yeah, and I got to tell you, my jam is teenagers. As a teenager with addiction, and as corporate leaders, like, I love working with people as leaders in corporations, because I was an exceptional leader and I was a horrible leader, and it really just depended on the time in my life where I was at. And my thought is this: if you're in a position of power over other people, it is your obligation and responsibility to give them the tools to empower them, to lift them up, make them feel safe, and be in an inclusive and welcoming environment. If you're messy, you cannot do that. And that's just facts. And so I really love to work with leaders. But again, I love what I do. I did find my passion, Sabrina. And so if people people have questions, pick up the phone. I'm always happy to have a great conversation with anybody, really.
I love that. Thank you so much.
I'm not sure
For those of you that are listening live or on the replay, you can find Kerri Lewis at kerrilewis.coach. Where do you hang out on social media? If someone wanted to follow you on social, do you hang out anywhere?
Yeah, I'm a Facebook girl. I'm 43 and I haven't quite dipped into Insta. So I do lives. I also have a video newsletter. So I send videos through my newsletter. I don't write because I really want people to recognize the importance of what I'm saying. So you can sign up for that on Facebook. And then I also have a YouTube channel that I'm just starting to get active as well.
Awesome. And then what is your Facebook under your name?
Yeah, it's Kerri Lewis Coach.
On Facebook?
Yep.
Like that?
I think it's kerrilewis.coach.
kerrilewis.coach. kerrilewis.coach.
Perfect. Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, this has been absolutely phenomenal. So appreciate what you do. For those of you listening live who resonate with Kerri and all the goodness that she has spoken about today, make sure you connect with her at kerrilewis.coach. And you can also find her on Facebook under the same thing, which is really cool. We love to connect people here on this platform in order to make sure that we all continue to rise. Any closing thoughts, Kerri, as we wrap up?
Speaking your truth is scary. I'm not going to take that away. However, the more you speak your authentic truth to yourself and to others, the more empowered you become, the more self-confident you become, and the more you learn that you're intrinsically worthy to be here in this space. And that goes for anybody. We weren't born just to exist. We were born to shine. And so please start sharing your truth. And for anybody who needs help, I literally have been teaching communication through kindness for years. Reach out. I'm happy to walk you through it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kerri. So appreciate you being here. That brings us to an end of another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our amazing guest speaker, Kerri Lewis, for sharing her wisdom and inspiring us all. To each and every one of you, our dedicated listeners, thank you for staying with us until the very end. Your support and engagement means the world to us. Remember to follow, like, and share this episode with your fellow humans. Join me again in our next time to catch captivating stories, enlightening thoughts, and empowering ideas to fuel your journey. Once again, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, on Facebook, where we continue these transformative conversations and uplift each other every step of the way. Until